I'm pretty much scared of all wrestlers. When you're in a locker room with all that experience, it can be pretty intimidating. Then you chat to them and realize they're awesome and you move on. It doesn't always go like that though. For you see, there are some guys who terrify everyone, be that away from the ring or within it. They're just straight up scary, mostly because you don't know what they're going to do. Not exactly what you want when you're trusting your body to them, but that's why wrestling is always a risk. You just never know. Plenty of performers have written themselves into history, however, because they are so feared, and that's what we're gonna look at today. I'm Simon from WhatCulture. Please do hit that subscribe button. This is 10 wrestlers feared by other wrestlers. Number 10, The Sheik. Pretty quickly, Ed Farhat, aka The Sheik, carved a niche for himself as a name to be feared. Even now, when others talk about him, they do so with an air of worry, just in case his ghost comes up from nowhere and kicks their ass. Wouldn't put it past him either, the man intimidated everyone. Not only the uncle of fellow hardcore maniac Sabu, it was Farhat who pioneered many of the bloodletting techniques that his nephew would go on to use in the original ECW. Jim Cornette has even spoken about this on his podcast, and that some enhancement talent would become physically upset when they found out that yes, they'd been chosen to work against the Sheik. Think of that, it's like being told you're about to wrestle a bear. Most knew that it was a gimmick, but even then there was just a slight worry that Ed could go into business for himself and do something nuts. Given that this idea translated to the live audiences as well, and it's clear why he made somewhat of a success of himself. He got you to believe, and then crap your pants. But still. Number 9, Ken Shamrock. Chris Jericho has been kicking ass recently. He's helping AEW to grow by using all of his talents of skills, and throughout the years too, we have heard stories about Y2J standing up to people that could easily beat him up. I mean, he didn't back away from Brock Lesnar, and that says everything. If he's indignant, he's going all in. Even then though, Jericho knew to stay away from Ken Shamrock. Talking about this in one of his books, Chris recalled working with Shamrock in the then WWF, particularly one spot that would see him slap Kenny around before legging it. Unfortunately, Jericho hit the former UFC champ with a chop that wasn't to his liking, to the point he chased him up the rampway and wouldn't even stop when they were behind the curtain. It took others getting involved to calm this down, but Jericho learned quickly that Shamrock's shoot background made him a powder keg. It makes sense too. If you've been fighting people for real for years, it must be pretty hard to turn that switch off. Luckily for Chris, he still has some arms left. Balance this story against the one we learned in 2019 when Ken Shamrock was doing dick flips with Joey Ryan, and what an amazing tool time is. Number 8, Bob Holly. There are varying reports on exactly what happened during the 3rd season of WWE's reality show Tough Enough. Some have claimed Bob Holly's beatdown on rookie Matt Cappotelli was something the trainer knew about beforehand, where others have criticized Holly's roughhousing approach towards a guy that was just learning the ropes. If Bob was looking to strike fear into the hearts of wrestling trainees everywhere, however, he damn well succeeded. Holly had earned a hard man reputation for not taking any crap at any moment and sticking up for the industry wherever he could. Apparently, he felt guys like Cappotelli were taking WWE's lifestyle lightly, so he decided to teach them a lesson. That, according to people like Al Snow, JBL and more, was just Bob being Bob, even if he was heavy-handed. The bruises he left on Cappotelli's body became a shocking reminder to those breaking in elsewhere that WWE isn't an easy gig. Watching his super stiff blows on someone who blatantly doesn't know how to cope with them is difficult even now. Personally speaking, I'm not surprised Matt struggled to deal with this. I would have cried. Uncondonable in my view. I would much prefer a world where we support and help. This was just Bob Holly kicking somebody's ass because he could. That's my 2 cents. Number 7, Roger Smith. Wrestlers don't have to be stiff or shoot fighters to be feared. Others, like the inconspicuous Roger Smith, were scary for other reasons. Jim Cornette once again spoke about this on his podcast, and where Smith, who once wrestled as Dusty Rhodes' parody Dirty Rose and was part of the Assassins, creeped everybody out with his lifestyle and the things that he said. For example, he once told Cornette that he felt like killing himself and taking all of his friends with him. That prompted the manager to nervously joke that he was never fond of Roger to begin with. I suppose in some way he was kidding around even though it wasn't funny at all. Other freaky stories include the time he burned a cross into promoter Nick Gulas's front lawn due to a disagreement over paid booking or something else. I mean, that would work, but how on earth have you got there to begin with? Finally, he became legendary in locker rooms for tangling with the police. He took a woman hostage and ended up with a SWAT team outside his home. Smith took being feared to a whole new level as antics gave many people backstage goosebumps. I knew he was booked on a show, I would have run the other way. Number 6, Minoru Suzuki. Minoru Suzuki is just tough. Even with his wrestling legacy, he's also been involved with MMA for years and had more fights than many who just focus on one sport. His current win-loss record is 30-20, and 22 of those victories came by the way of submission. In short, Suzuki knows how to stretch people left, right and center, and he probably likes doing it. Amazingly though, anyone who has met or worked with the man will tell you that his mild-mannered presence and polite greetings are somewhat of a shock and simply hide the fighter underneath. He's fairly passive most of the time then, although you get the feeling he could snap at any moment if he felt disrespected. It's amazing to watch as grown humans tiptoe around the guy because they know what he could do. Inside the ring, Suzuki is a workhorse for sure and someone that likes to lay his stuff in. He's the walking definition of strong style, and he clearly doesn't shy away from physicality. His rich history in MMA, wrestling, kickboxing, and the shoot-style UWF prove that he is a badass who is well up for a scrap. Hence why I'm looking the other way. Number 5, Brian Pillman. Brian Pillman's loose cannon gimmick made such an impact we still talk about it now over 20 years later. There's a reason for that, and it's because he created such an off-the-wall character nobody knew if he'd actually lost his mind, and that included those he worked with. Eric Bischoff has said time and time again that he and others at one stage were worried about Brian's sanity. Of course it was all a ruse, but that wasn't common knowledge. Pillman went so far with it he ruined relationships with people he had known for years, and this soon transitioned into a sense of fear around the man. In short, when it comes to the mid-90s, there were few better at working the boys than Brian Pillman. If you had talked to them at the time, they would have said he was bonkers. His short-lived stay in ECW turned heads, and his ability to work WCW into releasing him so he could sign for great money with the WWF was unreal. Everything about Pillman's run as the character reeked of psychotic behavior only a deranged soul could have dreamed up. Number 4, Andre the Giant. It is said that if you could get Andre the Giant into a bar, put a drink in his hand and called him boss, he would take to you. The drinking stories around him are amazing, but there was more to the Giant because he also struggled with his size and health. All of this too when he got mad attention whenever he went because of how big he was. On top of that, he also didn't like those who disrespected the locker room. Bruce Pritchard told this on his podcast about how Andre wasn't fun of working with the Ultimate Warrior, especially when he found out that Warrior wasn't trying to fit in with his friends backstage. When they wrestled a series of house show matches during a tour, the Giant made sure to let the Warrior know not to flub around by stiffing him and genuinely being uncooperative with the babyface sensation's comebacks. Not like he could do anything about this either. Again, Andre was like a fridge. Others knew that the Giant could be a handful if he didn't like you. If you got on the wrong side of the guy, you were going to have a rough night. That was just the way it was, and that made Warrior and others even more terrified of working with him. Number 3, Bruiser Brody. In the early 90s, WWF wanted to push Lex Luger as hard as they could. He was the best of the best and fans were gonna love him. As we know, that's not how it went, and this would have fallen further if the audience had seen Luger's scared expression when Bruiser Brody decided he was going to stop selling his punches in 1987. Brody thought they were too stiff, so right there in the middle of a cage no less, Bruiser just stared a hole through Luger's head. He was not pleased. Lex wasn't the first to think whether or not Brody was actually a dangerous person. He had a threatening mystique to him, and this was something the man prided himself on throughout his career. It freaked everybody out, and according to the Wrestling Observer's report, Brody told Lex afterwards that he didn't have a problem with him, but said the match just wasn't working. It's like when your mum tells you she's not sad, she's just disappointed. The Observer went on to say that a ringside fan allegedly heard Lex yell to referee Bill Alfonso, "Get the door open, he's nuts!" Though this isn't audible in some fan cam footage from the event, but let's pretend it's true anyway. Number 2, New Jack. I ain't saying anything bad about New Jack. He may come after me, and I don't need it. And yeah, he's never going to win any awards for Best Technical Wrestler during his prime. Then again, that wasn't his deal. He was there to give fans exactly what they expected, and that was mostly weapon-based stunts. It was as if New Jack couldn't feel pain, or if he did, he just didn't care. He also didn't shy away from violence at all, and his infamous part in the mass transit incident had the entire wrestling world debating right and wrong. When the real ex-bounty hunter was around, people knew they were going to see blood, brutality, and probably some balcony dives. I mean, go and YouTube them now, good grief. Paul Heyman said during a 2016 Q&A tour that he had no hope when it came to New Jack's love of destruction. Instead, he just let him be and typically tried to focus on his strengths. That, as Heyman also explained, wasn't great to other wrestlers who knew they had to be on the other end of a beating. Number 1. Haku. Haku, men, call him what you want, just be nice to him. If you're not, he may bite your nose off, because he is someone that nearly all wrestlers have called the single toughest man in the entire industry. Haku's exploits are the stuff of legend, and it's no surprise that he tops this list. Put it this way, Bobby Heenan said during a shoot interview that Andre the Giant confided in him that even he was scared of Haku. That says it all, and so does the fact that Kevin Sullivan witnessed him bite a chunk of flesh out of some poor fella's back and spit it back at him. I've not even got going either, and we're already talking about eating somebody's back. What are we even doing? Shane Douglas once watched in awe as cops maced Haku without any success, and Heenan couldn't fathom what he was seeing when the Tongan reached into another chap's mouth with 2 fingers and snapped off a tooth. How true these stories are we don't know, but do you want to question it? I don't, and therefore I won't. Haku chased me once, and even a slight touch left a bruise on my arm. No word of a lie. He is something else. Know of any wrestlers that are feared by other wrestlers? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Then you head over to WhatCulture.com and you read yourself some articles, and you watch more videos here at WhatCulture Wrestling. My name is Simon from WhatCulture, and I will talk to you again soon.